I have a question from Viv now.
Hi. There are proposals for fracking in Park Royal. Fracking cannot be made safe by regulations and it is a fossil fuel. Do you support fracking there or anywhere else in Brent, yes or no?
Stephen, start with you.
Again, just to say, many emails about this in the last 24 hours. And I have to say, it's a core question that I want to address is my personal view that unequivocally I would absolutely try to stop it. Because, you know, from everything I've read, it's very harmful to the water table. Again, I would have to defer to the experts about fracking, and I'm sure that you probably know far more about it than I do. But what I have read is that it's very difficult to predict how the damages, the impact that it can have, and so the gains that could be yielded would be potentially offset by the huge damages. So I know the plans for the Park Royal, so I would say absolutely categorically I would be against this, and also I would just want to say that as prospective MP, my feeling is that I should be listening to all the constituencies within all the constituents within Brent and be guided by what they have to say. And if the overwhelming majority is no way, 100% no way, that is what I would be representing in Parliament.
You want to come this way?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, the Green Party has a strong track record of opposing fracking, and you hear a lot of nonsense spouted about the net benefits of all this. There is a serious risk and danger and harm to water through the contamination use of chemicals. In an urban environment like ours, you will also have the risk of subsidence. I think a key problem here, and it's already been alluded to, well, if there were a popular groundswell of opinion against it, then you would support that. Well, basically we have to say, we would say, in this case, we wouldn't go ahead with it in any event. Now, but that popular opinion is on our side, and rightly so, and one of the key problems here is a lack of democratic accountability, because yet again, it's those prospectors, those business interests, which seem to hold sway with the government. The very fact that they're opening up the option of licensing, that shouldn't be happening in the first place. So you heard earlier Dawn saying that they would improve the licensing regime. We're saying there's no place for it. We need to move away wholesale from fossil fuels. This new technology isn't welcome in Brent, it isn't welcome in Harrow, it isn't welcome anywhere in the country. Our Green Party politicians have been arrested for this, even their family members, if they've been in the wrong place in the wrong time. I would say in the right place at the wrong time, in the right place at the right time, have been arrested for it. So we stand with the people against this fracking.
So I don't want to be accused of NIMBYism, because it is literally going to be, you know, very close to me. And I want to thank Viv for actually educating me in regards to fracking. And what that was a journey. So it meant that I had to read a lot more about it. I then got the Shadow Minister to come and speak to a group of people about it. And it's important to know Labour's position on it. So it is important to know that Labour has put in some safeguards which the government has attempted to weaken the position. And they've said that there should be no shale gas developments in the UK unless the protections are reintroduced. So it's important to know what Labour's position is and then what's my position on it. And as I say, I don't want to be accused of NIMBYism, but it's been a process of me actually understanding what it actually means. And I don't think that there's a place for fracking. I think we should be focusing more on cleaner energies, like solar paneling, like wave energy, like wind energy. And I think if we focus on those areas first, that's where we should be putting all our money and our time and our energy into doing that. So I think let's focus on that. And yes, it means that obviously I will have to, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, then I'll have to persuade my colleagues that this is the route we should go down. And I'm hoping that it will be an open door, because there is already a commitment to focus on greener energy. And all we need to say is, right, we're going to commit to that, let's commit to that and forget about everything else. And if that doesn't work, then we'll go back around the table and have a discussion.
Ollie, thank you.
Thanks. First I'd like to say I'm really pleased that you've all been getting these emails because we've had some technology problems and we weren't sure they were going out, so that's I'm very glad that our supporters have been getting our emails and they've been contacting you. But there's a serious point behind that, which is that we think fracking is a huge issue in this election as well as for the environment in general, and constituents across the country should be able to know where fracking will be opposed, where their candidates who may or may not take office have promised to be frack-free. And that's why you can go onto our Friends of the Earth website, and we've done this jointly with Greenpeace, who, we both have exactly the same position on fracking, and you can whack in your postcode and you can see your own constituency and whether or not each of the candidates has signed this frack-free promise. And we hope that as more and more candidates sign that promise, the map becomes greener and greener, and the fracking industry will have to look at that and see the reality of this situation, which is that fracking is not wanted in the UK. But it's, as well as the sort of popular attitudes to fracking, it's just worth thinking about it in the sort of in the investment scale, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, but we do face a choice about whether or not we stick with the technologies of the past, fossil fuel extraction, hydrocarbons being burned for our energy, or we have a modern, ambitious, clean, and frankly much more democratic energy system where people can own and generate their own energy systems. And by pursuing fracking now and in building a new industry around that, we will have hundreds of thousands, potentially, of people, companies with a vested interest in locking us into high carbon fossil fuel extraction for a long time, which, as we talked about earlier, is not compatible with climate change goals. So it's both a question of the local environmental limits and our direction of travel in terms of energy. So please sign the pledge if you haven't already.
Now, Dawn says there's nothing wrong with NIMBYism. I say, or rather, there's a problem with NIMBYism. Actually, I say there's nothing wrong with NIMBYism here. The idea that anyone would be fracking in an urban environment sounds to me absolutely crazy. Imagine for 1 second if an oil derrick went up just out round the corner. You'd all be up in arms, rightly so. Why? Because it's an urban environment. There are issues, specific issues here in urban environments that don't lend themselves to any kind of extractive process like this. And if anyone wants to come and frack in Brent, I say frack off to you. And I mean that, I'm not doing it in that sense. But let's look at the broader picture here. And I think it's important to note. Now, there's a bit of sleight of hand game on it. Dawn is saying the Labour Party is anti-fracking. No, they're not. They're pro-fracking, just as my party is pro-fracking. Yeah, safeguards, okay, fine. But they're pro-fracking. Now let's look at the broader question of why this is happening, this question. I think we need to start asking these questions and look at it. I think it comes down to what Ollie has just said again, about the approach that we need to take looking at our power and our energy consumption. Now, to be fair, Shahrar has suggested a way that we can all get away from all kinds of this. He says, reduce consumptionism. It's wonderfully utopian. I wish we'd all do that. But it's a very utopian gesture, and it would be fantastic if everyone in the country and indeed the world decided to do it. But that's really not how human behaviour works. It just doesn't work, in the sense of how that happens. So I'm curious to know a bit more about how he proposes we do it. In terms of on a massive scale to make that difference. But, so if you're not going down that route, we have power consumption. So if we don't frack, what's the alternative? Well, my answer would be go for renewables, of course, go straight in for that, go invest heavily and bring the technology forward to transform it. But let's assume that doesn't happen. Let's assume we don't frack and we don't go quite as quickly down that path, which is probably where a number of people will end up. Well, then you face a difficult problem that if you don't frack, you end up simply importing your energy. That's what will happen, and importing energy is also bad for the environment. It's bad for the environment because of the way it comes here. It's a disaster that way. So I think the big question really is about how we actually manage that transfer from that fossil fuel industry-led economy and turn it into something much more friendly to renewables. And until we solve that, it's going to be very difficult to stop fracking. And that is the honest answer to that. And if you'll go down that process. It will start because there's not an answer. So my answer to that is to stop that. I would be a firm advocate for renewable energy. Right now I'm pushing forward for that, so we don't even have to start down that agenda, and we cut down on imports and everything else that we do as well.
Can I answer some of that?
Yeah, I might just let Dawn come back and then Shahrar come back to a few questions if you want to.
Not really. I think everybody will assess what he said quite easily.
Yes, I do want to come back. It's very important. So Alan is both consistent and inconsistent. Firstly, he's consistent on the free market side. He's a champion of the free market, so he believes in fracking for that reason alone, I'm sure. He's inconsistent because he also rails to the cause of high-speed rail HS2. I also think that's a wholly unsuitable thing to be building under and tunnelling under the residents of Kensal Rise, in the same way we wouldn't want to do that with fracking. He has also now nailed his colours firmly to the utopian mast, saying that your utopia is the American dream, is it not? Your utopia is overconsumption like there's no tomorrow. I don't think that that's realistic, actually. I think there's nothing more painful than an uninhabitable planet. I think that I'm the realist. I'm the one who's saying that we can't go on like there's no tomorrow. I think that people do understand. You asked about what is it about human nature. Human nature, people in their better moments, they themselves would admit, the more they earn, the more they think they can't afford what they really need. It's not because they don't have more stuff, it's because they're generating increasingly more insatiable desires the richer they get, and they're becoming more and more dissatisfied. So they themselves realise that the American dream does not make them happier. So all we're doing is we're saying that. We're saying that we can find a better way of life for all of us, where we're not consuming as much, and actually we lead a happier, more work-life, balanced life, and we care for people around us and the environment, and what we're doing at the moment to the planet. So there you have it in a nutshell. Alan doesn't really care about the environment, and he's explained to you why, because it's the American dream, and it's free market like there's no tomorrow.
Very simple, Shahrar hasn't been listening to a word I've said. When did I say that at all in that way? Nonsense. I'm not in favour of overconsumptionism in any way, shape or form. I'm suggesting that his idea of us getting to this utopian vision of everyone living on farms, which is what his party has said, with some of their policies, you know, in terms of destruction of the City of London in that context, is just unrealistic. We can get to a better environmental system. We can do. We've got to be realistic about it. That's the kind of thing I support. And I absolutely, again, I don't want us to be fracking at all. Not at all. I want us to be investing in renewables and going down that route. That's clearly the realistic route we're going to get there. Not through Shahrar's dreaming of, you know, farming and everything else.
He's on the arches. He's on the arches.
Well, I won't respond directly to those last points, I think. Just one, it came up earlier. Fracking hasn't happened in the UK for nearly 4 years. It's not an industry which is winning. Scotland have declared a moratorium on fracking. Wales have declared a moratorium on fracking. Denton in Texas, where they invented it, has now banned it. You know, it's the technology of the past. As the regulations have, or rather, as the lack of regulations have exposed the local environmental and health impacts, the social license for fracking operators has disappeared. And the other thing to say is that even the fracking industry say it will be about 8 to 10 years before they could be operating at a commercial scale in the UK. So conservatively, we're looking at 2023 before you've got any reasonable level of fracking that could contribute to our electricity supply, or indeed the gas for heating market. So it's pie in the sky stuff. It's a distraction, and energy saving and renewables is where the energy is in a political sense, and where it needs to be supported by all parties. And I would be very keen to hear kind of small parties objecting to it on climate change grounds as much as anything else.
Okay, thank you. That's quite an intense discussion, so I think it's time for some magic. So, Ian, did you want to?
Well, I just want to point out that we are Friends of the Earth. We organised this. Brent Friends of the Earth organised this. I've got a piece of paper here. It says Friends and Earth on it. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to take this piece of paper. I'm going to fold it once, twice, 3 times. Now, as I unfold it, it will become clear what this appeal to you is, because as I unfold it, you'll see that it has actually turned into a £20 note. Now, what I need you to do is to, since we've got this bucket here,